Hello, good people. I'm Janae Hawkins, the Chief Partnerships Officer at Makers, a gender equity brand where we create engaging, intentional, and accessible spaces that fuel transformation for leaders navigating life and work. At the heart of our work is a simple belief. When women are seen, heard, and resourced, entire ecosystems shift at work, at home, and across generations. That's why we're proud to partner with cause Celebre to bring you this special moment centering the voices of mothers, women whose children have become major figures in the arts and entertainment industry. They'll compare notes, share revelations, and unique insights about motherhood. So follow along. You might discover a new way to think about legacy, influence, and the steady power behind extraordinary journeys.
Welcome to Cause Celebre, the new podcast that shares the shine, which means we find extraordinary women and causes that they champion, and we highlight them. And tonight we are so excited to welcome three incredible women. And these women happen to be mothers. And the theme of our show tonight is all about motherhood. There is no cause that is as important as motherhood. It is the ultimate cause célèbre. And without further ado, I would like to welcome three women. The first one is Miss Delora Vincent, who is the mother of Samantha, Paul, and Vin Deisel. And then we have Dr. Helen Hudlin, the mother of Reggie and Warrington Hudlin. And finally, Miss Tina Knowles, mother of Beyonce and Solange Knowles. And so tonight we're going to have a conversation that really is about these women. We often find that we talk about, famous names, but we never really see the story or hear from them, the story behind the story. And so I'm really just thrilled to be able to have these incredible women ask questions amongst themselves about what, motherhood. What's it meant to them? Where do they get their inspiration about motherhood? And with that in mind, I know that Miss Delora Vincent, who we'll call Delora tonight, is going to ask the first question for us.
It's Mother's Day, and I would love if you guys would like to do this. Say a one-liner or something about something we got from our mothers.
Okay, who do you want to start?
Well, my mother, the most important thing I remember about her and the most valuable thing I think that has implanted kindness in me is my mother was very kind and always caring. No matter what happened, no matter how poor or badly things were, she was never negative. She was always positive, and she was kind and always saw a way out of whatever the situation that everyone else considered negative. She would always say, well, it could be, or this, and make you look at the other side of it. And I think that helped me a lot. I think it had a lot to do with how I am today, because I never felt completely defeated. I always felt there was a way. And so I remember that the most, and I think was so valuable. Something that you can't see and put your hands on, but it just happens. It comes out of like nowhere. And it takes over your spirit, your thought, and it's so bountiful to me to have that in me that I think it's carried me a long way.
Ms. Tina?
I think it would be my faith in God. That's the biggest lesson that my mom taught me. That's carried me through my whole entire life. A lot of the things that Dr. Hudlin shared was also a description of her, but I think if I was going to do a one-liner, it would be that she taught me how to have faith even at the most crucial, challenging times in my life.
And Delora, what about you? What about your mom?
So my mom had a tough way to go in her life. But one thing that stays with me, and we were taught from early on, simple thing, not to judge people unless you walked in their shoes.
And what of the things that your mother's taught you do you feel that you imparted the most on your own children? And this one will start with Miss Tina.
Well, absolutely. The faith is passed on to my kids, that it will get them through the toughest times, and that, you're going through it. You're not going to get stuck there. It's called going through it because you're going to come out on the other side.
Mhm.
Just resilience, I think. I think my mother was the most resilient person I've ever seen, and I have passed that on to my children. No matter what's going down, no matter how challenging the situation is, like Dr. Hudlin said, you're going to get through it and bounce back because you are resilient and you are strong and you just got good stock in you. So I know resilience is a big deal for me passing that on to my kids.
And Dr. Hudlin, for you, I truly believe that the sense of being able to do anything in the world that you have imbued with both your boys is just so palpable. It's so there. And I know it's you, because there's a confidence that comes from when your mother believes in you, truly believes in you, no matter what. You just know you're going to get through it no matter what happens.
Thank you. Thank you. That you summed it up for me. That's excellent.
And speaking of summing it up, Miss Tina has an incredible book called Matriarch. It is an odyssey. We're going to link all of the information in the show notes. It's just come out in paperback recently. And it is such an invaluable resource for not just one woman's journey through motherhood, but generations of women. And I'm going to read an excerpt from the book, if that's okay with you, because I think that it's very timely for what we're speaking about, the topic of motherhood. And it says, we all have this power to be matriarchs, to be women of the sacred practice of nurturing, guiding, protecting, foreseeing, and remembering. The matriarch's wisdom is ancient, for she is filled with the most enduring, ferocious love. I tell you, I read this book, and not only did I read it on hard copy, but I listened to parts of it on audio, and I don't normally do that. And your accent, the lilt of the Southern accent, but more importantly, the raw emotion that I actually sense, the honesty, and how self-effacing you were about motherhood. Because you didn't give yourself a break. You actually owned up to stuff and, you were wrong. And so my question then is you're all matriarchs, but how easy has it been? What is your journey with acknowledging mistakes and missteps? And how do you navigate that as a mother?
Yeah, I made a lot of mistakes as a mother, as I think everyone does. And even though we're not counting the mistakes, our kids are. My kids remember every time I was late picking them up, as an example. Even though I had a hair salon, I had 3 kids at 3 different schools, because I also raised Kelly Rowland from 10 years old. And they were at 3 different schools, and I would put people under the dryer and run out and try to go get the 3 of them from school. And I would pick the one that would give me the least hard time, which would be Beyonce always. Solange and Kelly would let me have it. And it was just funny because they are grown women now in their 30s and 40s, and they still remember every time they were embarrassed because they were the last kid there. And I'm getting emotional about it because it was so hard for me. And they just, kids want what they want, and they want you to pick them up. They don't want you to embarrass them. So they remember all the mistakes. And so you got to be mindful that they were there. And so you can't rewrite history. And you have to own up to the times you made mistakes, or you judged something wrong, or you were too hard on them, or you were too soft on them. And each child is so very different. And my children are very different because my younger daughter is still mad at me because I wasn't on her to make A's and B's. And the older one was like, I was so grateful that my mama didn't stay on me about getting A's and B's. You know, they're all very different. So I made a lot of mistakes trying to sometimes make the two or the three of them the same person. And I just decided to put it in the book. I put it in the book, then I took some of the things out, and then I said, you know, this is important for them to know that this was honest. And I can't just be honest about their stuff. I got other people's stuff. I got to be fess up to my own. So I think it's very important to own up to your mistakes. And even though it might be painful sometimes.
And I think also there's a sense of forgiving yourself, right? I don't know if you all experience this, but it's innocent, right? And you were busy, you had lots going on. I never know a mom who's not juggling and multitasking and, you know, constantly crazy, all this stuff going on. And you know what? I'm not trying to be, I'm not trying to be gender specific, but most men that I know, they have a problem multitasking. So when you see a mom who's juggling, you know, schedules and appointments, especially if they're in any kind of entertainment and they have talents that you have to do after school, whether it's sports or music or singing, it's hard. It's hard to, and then you work full time. It's really difficult. How did you balance that, Delora, and not lose a sense of your own self and your own identity in the process?
Well, I can say that I was kind of mom that there wasn't a night that went by that I didn't think I could do better the next day. For sure. And did I read enough? Are they being creative enough? Are they bored? And you know, I would juggle with, you know, I would work part-time at times when they were little, until they were free to fully go to school. But they will definitely give me a hard time for some things. I used to joke that if, give me 2 hours notice if you're bringing people home. You know,
Did they?
they would.
Oh.
Mostly. Sometimes it would be a surprise, but yeah, mostly. And I kind of a firm believer in it's not what happens to you, but what you do with it. That's kind of bottom line for me.
Hudlin, did you ever have any kind of interaction with the boys where they were, you know, just how ungrateful kids can be? You're there working full time, you're pursuing everything, and you had some kind of pushback from your boys?
I have to say I didn't have that from him or either of the three. The thing that I liked best about my boys, when the day is over or the week or the month, whatever I'm going through, I start blaming myself and feeling uncomfortable. And even now, I go back and say, do you remember when? I'm so sorry I did so and so to you. You know what they say? I don't even remember, Mom. Oh, that relieves the pain because you carry this pain of knowing, as Tina said, you made so many mistakes that you are in pain continually as you watch them grow up and mature and go. You think about what you didn't do, that you should have done. And when you bring those things up that you've been carrying in your heart for years, and you can talk to them about it, because now, like Reggie, he's parent now. So he knows. He's got a 23-year-old and an 18-year-old. So he knows. And he says to me, Mama, I don't even Warrington will say, I don't remember when it happened. What? That is like salve going over my heart, because you carry that pain. I know what Nina's she's talking about. You carry that pain deep in your soul when you think about the mistake that you made, and you say, how did these children get to be so wonderful? And how do they still like me? So I remember some mean things that I did.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's just the opposite. I feel it's painful when you think about it, Tina, isn't it? It's painful because you really wanted to do the right, but you just don't know everything, and it's just too much to do. You're trying to juggle so much.
That's true.
I understand it.
Delora, you were going to say something.
Maybe the hardest time for me in some ways is not when my kids were little, because I knew what I wanted to do, but when I went back to get my master's in social work, and my sister passed away, and I became a mother again. And here comes my little nephew at 3, and I've got a 2-year program ahead of me, and I somehow managed to pull it off. I have no idea. A lot of help. My kids were a lot of help. We had that kind of family. We'd sit around the table and say, she just passed away. We can get him. What should we do? What do you think? And all of them, thumbs up, let's do it. All of them, Irving and I went and got him, and the boys made a room for him, brought toys for him. That was the kind of life that we had. It was a lot of work and more than you thought, like having children at first, and it's not 1, it's 2. And then Timothy, when you thought you were almost done, but no, you're far from done. How do you
also the sense of mothering is not exclusive to who you've had biologically.
Yes.
I don't have kids, and yet I've mothered quite a few kids. And I know, Miss Tina, you talk about the gifts of Kelly Rowland or your niece, Angie. And there are other women now, I'm sure that you also feel very maternal towards.
I have thousands of kids, but a lot of them quite close to me. And, one of the other messages that I wanted to put in the book is that it's amazing to have a biological mother, but if you don't have that experience with your mother, if your mother's gone, that there are other people that are willing and happy to take over that, to take over the nurturing part of it. And I had, I got Kelly she lived with us from the age of 10, not because her mother was around. Her mom was a live-in nanny, and she didn't really like her living in with the families because it's not the same as having your own home. So she wound up supposedly staying with us the summer, and she didn't leave. She was the last kid to leave at home. Okay. So it doesn't have to be your biological mother. You can have someone to nurture you, and you can nurture them, and have this close relationship. Because I have a lot of friends that didn't have the same type of relationship I had with my mother. They had a hard time with their mothers, and they're sometimes estranged from them. And this book has helped a lot of mothers to reconnect with their daughters, and daughters to reconnect with their mothers, because it's not a book that's talking about being a perfect mother. I definitely wasn't a perfect mother. And I stayed in a marriage for 33 years that I should have left a long time before, and I had a lot of guilt and shame about that. And so I think that was a really important message, is that there are people that are always willing to nurture and mother you. You should mother others who don't have a mother, and that's kind of been my thing for my entire life. So they don't have to be biological.
Mm-hmm. And what is it that if you were to, Dr. Helen, if you were to ask your grandchildren who you are, what do you think they would say about you?
Gee whiz, I'm thinking about my granddaughter who says, "Oh, you can do it." when I had my fall and I was going through getting my leg well to walk, they said, "Oh, you're going to be through with this in 2 or 3 minutes. We know you're coming right back." Right. So they always give you strength and credit for being more than what you are. And it just makes me feel good when I hear those positive comments from them. And one good thing that my granddaughter, Helena, did, she wrote something at school about who she'd like to be, and she wrote about me. Oh, that was such an honor. And I keep it on my phone. She sent it to me. And I keep it on my phone. And when I want to feel good, I just go back and find it and read it again. But that's important, what they think of you. And I think they give you too much credit, especially when the grandson, he says, "Oh, Grandma, you're going to be out of here in no time." Right back. And sure enough, the leg got better and I was out and walking. So I just think I have a good feeling of how they feel about me. And
how would your grandkids describe you, Delora?
Well, can I interject first that I'm so incredibly proud of my children. Vin and Paul and Samantha are incredible parents, and they have partners that are incredible. And I have 7 grandchildren, and I interact with them a great deal, and I get to see them parenting, and that is a joy. They are a joy of my life, and seeing my kids be the parents that they've become is a joy.
And how would they describe you as a person? Do they know you?
Funds sometimes, and they can share with me pretty much. I tell them there's nothing they can't ask me. If I can't answer it, I won't. So I never wanted to be that grandparent who just shows up for the holiday and the kids are decked out in their best and they have their A exam to show you. That I want it all. I want to see it all and be part of it all and support them.
Mm-hmm. And Miss Tina, I know that your grandkids, they're a little easier now. They have a little easier way because if they want to know you, they can read this. But I'm sure there's also the intimate relationship that you have with them. How has your experience mothering your own children affected and impacted you as a grandmother? What's that experience like?
I think, to be a grandmother is a way easier job than being a parent because you are not responsible for how they turn out. That's their parents' responsibility. And so being a grandmother is so fun for me because I'm not as serious. I'm not as uptight. I don't have to work all the time and balance all these things. And I'm not responsible. So I buy the noisiest toys. I'm always pushing, and when they want to do something really bad, they come and say, "Grandma, talk to my mama about that. Tell my mama, tell my daddy." And so I try not to interfere, but I am like I get to be cool.
Mm-hmm.
With your own kids, you can't be cool. You got to be careful. Mm-hmm. So I'm not as careful with them, and it is so much fun. I have so much more fun with them than I think I had with my children.
Mm. I mean, when I read, which I've read your book very thoroughly. One of the things that strikes me is that you are really intentional about looking at all of their individual lights and personalities. And it wasn't about, pushing them and being a stage mom and being in entertainment, but you were saying, oh, they have that interest. They have that drive. They want to do that. So I'm going to find my way to support them in doing that. And that's, I think, what probably all of you had done. You found a way to support your child's own curiosities, talents, and passions. And that's special. I want to read something that is in Miss Tina's book. Let me just pull it out here, because I think it's really illustrative of what we're talking about in terms of finding, again, I'm going to put my glasses on because I won't be able to see otherwise. It says, she asks, how could I help this child who at home was this huge personality, always singing and joking? Stop hiding your light from the world. So my question then is, how have each of you helped to nurture and bring out the light in your children, that it was innately there, but in what ways have you done that? And I'll start with you, Dr. Helen.
Believe, I guess, that everybody's different and everybody has a right to be different. And whatever it is they want to do, I want to help them. And I look at each one of the children, and maybe they don't think too much about what each other's doing. They'll think what they're doing is more important and more exciting. But I think that whatever they're doing, it's important to them, and I want them to do it and be themselves, not try to be someone else. No matter how different or how much each other or other people approve of it, everybody has that right. And that's what I really try to think about it when they want to complain about what one's doing and the other one's doing.
And how did you find that, Delora? You have four, because you count your nephew as well. How did you, find the time to identify their own innate light and personality and curiosity and interest, and nurture that, and sort of split it equally so that you weren't frazzled all the time? How did you manage that?
Well, first, let me just give a shout out to Westbeth, the artist community that we raised our kids in. Samantha was just born when we moved into Westbeth, and for instance, and where we live there, it's an artist building, and it was affordable for us, and there were painters and dancers and writers and actors and musicians. All of the families were made up of that. And so what we were able to give our kids as a result of that was that all that wealth of creativity. And I have to, I think of the children of Westbeth as being the treasure of Westbeth. So I'm not going to take sort of all of the credit, but we would have fun.
And Miss Tina, in many ways, your Westbeth was the community that you created. I mean, it seems like your house was the epicenter, like a Westbeth.
Made sure that the house was full of art, music, and dance, and all the creative things, because that was what my children. It's like the chicken and the egg. I don't know if it's because we played jazz and I took them to the museum and I took them and I surrounded them by art that they became artists, or if I saw in them veering towards being artists. And so I doubled down on all of that around them. I don't really know how it came about, but it came about that way. Just always music in the house, always creativity, always me doing projects with painting and redoing things and trying to. One of the things I really, really was important to me is my mom taught me how to create something from nothing, because I grew up extremely poor. But, she always was doing these creative projects, and I would be like, how did she even do that? How did she create? But she found a way to bring the arts into, she didn't know it, and it wasn't a name for it, but she brought creativity into our space. And so that's something that I imparted to my kids, and it was really important. And, you know, when they started veering towards singing and dancing and that type of thing, it was normal because, you know, I was in a singing group in high school. My husband was, he played the piano. We sang together a lot. It was always centered around creativity.
Mhm.
And so it's no wonder that that's the direction that they took. And, but if they had taken sports or, you know, acting or whatever, I would have supported it 100%. You know, it's not my first choice. People ask me all the time, are your grandchildren going to go in this business? And I'm like, I have a little prayer that I pray every day that they don't. But if they do, I'm going to 1000% be there to support them in every way that I can.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That is so clear in reading your book, Matriarch, that you were in many ways not, you know, people probably think looking at all of you that you were stage mums, you know, but not at all. It feels that you were just loving up on your kids and going to do everything in your power to support them. And creativity then became the sort of common thread with all of you. And developing that as opposed to getting famous, you know, and I think that has to be said because especially a younger generation where we have reality TV and everything is so instant and automatic and there's all this social media. They don't understand that it's actually the play, the exploration, the curiosity, the creativity that leads there. But there's another side to how all of you, if I think about it, the thread is that there was the social and political issues when all of you are raising kids. That must have been so incredibly complex. And I wonder how you navigated, you know, focusing on the innocence and the play and the creativity with your children and juxtaposing that to the reality of what was going on in the world. So I'll start with you, Dr. Hudlin. You raised kids, you know, in the 1950s. What was that like? And going through segregation and Jim Crow, all those things. How was that? And keeping a sense of their own, you know, desire to, or their sense of their own confidence and encouraging them to do and be anything they wanted to be, in spite of what was also going on sociopolitically.
That was the biggest thing for me to react to and think about and try to plan and do right by in terms of help them to go, was having them to do what they wanted to do and what they were interested in. Say, appreciate whatever group was in charge at that time, who was running the country or not running, and still let them make their own decision as to whether it was the right thing or not. It was, again, back to my old thing was, if that's what they want to do and they want to think, but I try to share the information of what it's like to be in certain situations in certain parts of the country, in certain countries, in certain school settings, all those things that were impacting during the 1950s, and let's don't talk about the 60s with that last one, teenager, what was going on. That was hard because you wanted to tell them what you thought and what you thought was the best way to think and to approve of which character and what activity was the best one to join, to do. It's like making their own decision and sometimes feeling very uncomfortable with what they were doing, but bearing with it. That was very difficult for me to do. When they wanted to do the arts and you really need a job and some money and certain situations that I thought were not good for them, but having the strength to hold on and hope they would come around to what was the best thing for them.
Mm-hmm.
But that was the most difficult thing, making decisions of approving with what's going on, and so much was going on.
Mm-hmm. And Miss Tina, I know you can relate, not just with your own children, but with your own self and your siblings.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, I grew up in really hard times in the South, and there was a lot of racial discrimination back then. And I grew up hearing, not from my parents, but hearing from the nuns and other people that, that I didn't really have a future because I wasn't that academic student. And so I heard a lot of negative messages. And so I knew growing up that I was smart, but I wasn't the traditional straight A student. And so I was just kind of written off as not being intelligent. And so I knew with my kids that I saw very early on that they were creatives. And I decided to celebrate their strong suits and not bring up the negatives, and to tell them that they could do anything they wanted to do. When Beyonce said to me when she saw Whitney Houston singing the national anthem at the game, she said, "I'm going to do that one day." And I said, "Absolutely you are." Now, did I believe she would do it? Probably not. But I told her, yes, you absolutely can. And I just find that common thread because when I was doing the book, I wrote down, this book was 1,000 pages and I had to take 600 pages out, but I met a lot of mothers of successful people and they all have that same kind spirit. I've never met one that didn't tell their kids that they could do anything, that didn't put limitations on them, that celebrated the things that were different about them and not put it down and try to fit them into a cookie cutter place. And so it is, it's that common thread that runs across. And just talking to these two mothers, I know that was the case. And so when people ask me, how did you raise these successful kids? A lot of times I'll say, you got to believe that they could do anything. And even when you don't believe that they could do anything, you have to tell them that you believe that they can do anything. And, and nurture whatever their gifts are, even if they aren't what you want them to be.
Yeah. And Delora, how did you anchor your children's values so that no matter what they chose to do, they would be just solid, good human beings?
But, by example, in our neighborhood, in our building, right across the hall from us was a freedom fighter in his early, pre-parent life. We had him over. We share that kind of stuff. My kids, Paul was lighter skinned and sort of blondish hair and then had his little afro. And sometimes, if we're born in 1967, in the first few years, you might walk down the street and people like I somehow created that as some political statement. So, and then my husband was directing off Broadway, with Woody King, who just passed away. And it was bringing Black theater into New York. So that was just part of their lives. It was just there, for them.
And then New York City, you would think that New York City would be a different kind of environment to foster that sort of openness and accessibility, but Texas wasn't.
Texas wasn't. I had that experience of my grandmother lived in Texas. One time we were passing through, we were going from New York to LA. I asked, I said, we're here. I'm a firstborn child and a firstborn grandchild. So I'm bringing these kids cross country. And I called my little Nana up and said, we're passing through. We could come and visit. And she called back to say, well, no. One of my aunties wasn't going for it. bring a multicultural family to their, but because my grandmother, a sweet little thing, drove 3 or 4 hours to meet us and stay with us in that upper part of Texas, Oklahoma area. And she got to see them. and that was enough for me. I'll add one thing that, what I'm proud of for Vin as a creative artist in his work, and Samantha has worked with us as well, is a lot of his work was around identity, and his ability to try to show a multicultural world in his work. And that is his gift giving back. But it came out of him, he wasn't Black enough, he wasn't white enough, he didn't speak Spanish. And he wrote a little thing on that, around that.
And we're going back to Texas. I brought that up specifically because I know that Miss Tina, you were born in Texas, and it was quite revealing to me how pervasive racism and it just followed your journey into your children's lives. And I was very taken by how bold you and your husband had to be to confront that, but in a way that kept your kids safe. And could you just talk a little bit about that?
Well, for us, when the girls got signed and they started taking off or whatever, the record label was adamant that it would be very hard for them to cross over to a white audience because of the way they dressed, because their hair was too big. I'm from Texas, so we had the big hair, and they called us country, and we spoke with Texas accents, and they decided that I was the problem because I dressed the girls like Motown, and they were too Black and they were too Southern, and designers didn't want to give them clothes. We went the whole gamut of racism, in that career, and we still deal with a lot of it. I mean, I can remember magazines saying Black people don't sell magazines, so we don't put them on the cover. And they didn't want you to take it personally because they said it's not personal. It's just the facts that Black people's faces don't sell magazines. But it wasn't true. It was because you were not showing them in the right light, and you were not giving them the opportunity, and you were not getting past the first shock of seeing them on a magazine. And so it was a lot of racism that we faced, but it's microaggressions. It's not like obvious racism. And so you can kind of get it mixed up sometimes. But at the core of it was we didn't get paid the same, didn't get the same kind of venues, didn't get the same, designers wouldn't give us clothes. It's how I started doing the girls' clothes, is because designers they were like, oh, we don't like them. Well, we don't like the way they look. We don't like their size. They're too thick. They're too, they wear braids. It's always too something. So I dealt with, you leave Texas and you think, oh, wow, I came to New York and I came to California. Things are going to be different, but they're just different. They're different from Texas because it's not as obvious, but it's still the same microaggressions. It's still the same racism. It's still the same. To this day, I find myself still saying, if I was so-and-so's mother, would they treat me this way? And the answer is absolutely not. It's a whole different standard. And it's just the cards we've been dealt. And you just have to work around that in the way that you know how. Because we are survivors.
Yeah. And, the thing about representation and imagery is so important. And one of the biggest impetuses for us to convene this wonderful group of women is that I always feel like we cannot emulate what we do not see. And in community right now, which I think globally, we need to see examples of motherhood, and in the sort of the bigger sense, not just the myopic, I'm a biological mom or I'm not a biological mom. It's not binary like that. It's that the expansiveness of one's heart to be, a mother to people, whatever they are and whoever they come from, whatever color they are. And so with this in mind, I want to talk about legacy. Like, what legacy do you want yours to be, especially with regard to women, being a mother? And Dr. Hudlin, I'll start with you.
Well, I guess the legacy is the old thing, do no harm. Whatever they decide to do, let it not be harmful in any way that they think that it is, or that they see it happening, harm being done by others, to not stand by and just let it happen, but to step in and help them who are doing harm to stop doing harm, and to take that on in every part of their life, wherever they are, working or not working, in school, wherever, but always to be the kind person and do the right thing for people. If everybody had that, no matter how brilliant they were, how beautiful or how talented or how highly educated they were, if everybody just did no harm, it would be a whole different world. And if I could get that and have all my children have that attitude and feel that way, wouldn't we have a wonderful world?
Children absolutely believes that, and they know that, because that's why they are who they are.
Yes.
You can see it in you.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry, Karen.
No, absolutely. And what about you, Miss Tina?
For me, I want my legacy to be that I made every room I walked in better. I left it better than when I came. It sounds like a cliche, but it's really what I truly believe and live by. I want to make a difference I don't want to just exist. I want people to talk after I'm gone long time to say, Miss Tina did this for me, or she helped me, or she supported me, or, something positive like that. That was the best legacy of all.
I'm so surprised that you didn't say, I want to make women feel beautiful, or, because that is such a theme in your book. You wanted all women, you wanted to imbue a sense of beauty in all women, no matter what they do, where they come from. You were just really focused on that. I thought that was such a beautiful, beautiful thing.
Passion of mine to always do that. But, and I do that a lot by I feel like if I go and I do a makeover, or I help somebody, or I help them to do something that makes them feel beautiful, that is making the world a better place, one person at a time. So
absolutely. And Delora?
I feel fulfilled in terms, there's only now, I feel fulfilled this moment in terms of who my kids are and these special grandchildren. And that brings me joy. But I do want to help other mothers, and I do want to help bring the sense that we're one species, we're one thing. This, anything that works against living out of fear or living out of fear and hate is what I see myself doing in whatever little way I can.
And at this stage where, your kids are grown now, and how do you handle sort of, how the tables turn a bit with motherhood? They become your mother in some ways. I find myself mothering my mother, and it's been a very interesting experience for me. I don't know about her, but for me, it's been very interesting. And it's something that I take very seriously. I'm very protective. I have lots of opinions, but I feel like it's my assignment. And because she did it so generously to me, that I'm not going to kill anyone, but I will kill for her. You know what I mean? And I read about the mama bear who came out. in all of your, when you fought for your kids. I know that all of you have had to fight for your kids tenaciously, but how does it feel to be on the receiving end of mothering from your children?
Well, when I went through cancer, I think that was the first time someone asked me in an interview this week, when did the tables turn? When did I realize that tables had kind of turned and that my children parented me? And I know that the first time was when I got a divorce after 33 years. And, and I was just really, really sad and just was going through my grieving, not him, but the marriage, and feeling sort of like a failure. And one night I just, I was really feeling down, and my kids just all showed up, and Kelly happened to be in town, and Solange and Beyonce and Angie, and they all just came. We had a big slumber party, and they were talking to me like I was the child. And, I was a little irritated at first, but I was like, let them parent you. And so that's what they did. They got ice cream. We looked at Set It Off. They were like, Mama, you are a bad woman, bad meaning good.
Yeah.
You look good. You're going to have a great life. And I needed to hear that. They were my biggest cheerleaders. And so they were absolutely parenting me. And then after, I didn't want the night to end. And I remember it was like 3:00 in the morning. And I was like, let's watch another movie. And they were like, no, it's time for you to go to bed because you got to get up tomorrow. And I'm like, how the tables have turned. So they were literally taking care of me. And they do. I mean, I had an incident this past week where my side was hurting. And I told my assistant about it, and I said, do not call my kids and tell them anything. Just go give me a heating pad and some Advil. And I was, doing my thing. And the next thing I know, a doctor was showing up. And my daughter had sent a doctor over because she snuck and told them, that I wasn't feeling well. And I was like, they are so bossy. I don't really need a doctor. But it's comforting to know. It's irritating, but it's comforting to know that if something happens that, now my kids are going to take care of me.
Absolutely.
And when you're taking care, you take care of your kids because it's your job to do. It's not, I don't feel like it's my kids' job to take care of me, but the fact that they want to is very comforting to me.
Yeah, I believe it's an honor. I think it's a tremendous responsibility, but I think it's an honor. And it's an honor that, for me anyway, I want to. I want to so badly. And my mom is proud, very defiant. So she doesn't always accept it, but it's something that I really, it's really important to me. And Delora, what about you? Are you an easy one to parent from your children?
I don't think so. But then Irving is 9 years older than I am. So all the attention right now, I'm just observing what it's going to be down the line, because all the attention now is on him. So even if I walk out the door with my daughter, she'll say, Mom, hold his hand. I'm here with them all the time. So what does she think is happening when I'm here? But they so care, and all of them, and they go out of their way to make sure that Irving has the right drink in the morning that he needs and he wants. They make it just goes on and on. They're so there, and their mates are also. What will be hard for me is I'm quite independent by nature, so I won't want to give that up anytime soon.
And Dr. Hudlin, we know something about independence, don't we?
Yes. That's my biggest problem. My daughter-in-law, and I just lost one of my 3 children on December 9th, and I'm still not really recovered. But I found out that the one who passed was so busy trying to take care of me and see that I had things after he knew he was going to pass away that I had him. I've discovered things get around the house, papers, work, signed and done. And other two just, everybody in my building says, she doesn't want, don't call them. She doesn't want you to call them. And one poor woman, I had to just say, why did you call my son? She slipped and called them and they got help from me, things like that. They just are always taking care of you. And I want to be independent. That's a problem. I really have a serious problem that I've just discovered in the last month or two, that it's very difficult when your children do things for you. And my daughter-in-law, she told everybody in the building, be sure and call, because I say, whatever you do, don't call Reggie. Don't call, because it seems unfair and you want to be independent, but it's a good feeling when you really know you're glad you had the help. They sent the dinners over and they did so many other ones. You just say, thank you. I really needed it.
And that's actually the point, isn't it? Because I think that where there is strength, there has to be vulnerability. And with love is an action as well as a noun, right? So it's in the doing. And I hope that mothers will realize that, as much as they have mothered, it's such an honor to be able to mother them as well, and to, for them to be the recipients of so much of what has allowed all of us to bloom.
I'm actually writing a book now, and it's about mothering. At this point, it might evolve into something else, but it's just in my meeting a lot of mothers of successful people in the entertainment business, or athletes, or, even in academia, or there is a reoccurring theme with them. And again, it's just interesting to me is these two women that are on the panel with us, that they are independent and they are reluctant for their kids to do everything for them. And I know that's been my personality from always, is that, my kids actually get irritated with me because they're like, Mom, why don't you let somebody do something for you? And it's not that, because I know that there will be a day that I will need them way more, but while I can still do things for myself, I want to do them for myself. That's not to say I'll never take anything from them, but I try to live as independently. And I think that that's just a common thread. It was just an observation that I had that just reinforces what I feel are things that make strong, independent kids. And that's another thing
it's probably what drove you in so many ways. And, your independence is a big theme in all of this. Yeah. Your fierce independence, your boldness, it was extraordinary. But you're right. There is a point when it's not even passing the baton, but it's accepting. Yes. There's a grace to receiving.
Yes, it is.
And it's about learning that.
Yeah, my son-in-law gave me, when I got cancer and I was so tired and I was so exhausted and so sad, and I had to fly to New York, and he said, I'm going to send a plane for you. And I'm like, oh, absolutely not. We're not going to spend all that money on the fuel and all of that, because I can get on a commercial flight with a bed and I'll be there. And you know what he said to me? He said, you know what? You got to really check yourself and think about the fact that when people are trying to give to you that you don't accept, and that makes that person not feel good, because just like you want to give to them, it makes that person, it's not for you, it's for us to want to give you back something. And it really touched my heart, because I'd never thought of it that way. I was just like, I don't want to be a fuss. I don't want to be a bother. I don't want you doing all this stuff for me. I can do it for myself, but it's really love that. And that's an extreme situation. But, when he told me you should accept the gifts that people give to you and not be the one, because it's really not healthy for you to always be the giver. And it was a real lesson for me. I've been really trying to work on that, accepting compliments, accepting things from others, and not just always being a giver. So anyway, that was just an observation as well.
Delora's nodding her head as well.
Yeah, I
Love
bet
that.
you guys relate.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Well, I just wish all of you such a wonderful Mother's Day. You are exemplary examples of mothers and on motherhood. And we could all learn the gift of giving, but also receiving. And I hope that on this Mother's Day that you will be bountiful in how much you receive as much as how much you give, because that's the only way to keep the cycle going. And your children and the biological ones, the non-biological ones, the ones you have not met, even people who are listening to this, we are all the recipients of your motherhood and your mothering. And I, on behalf of all of those nameless people, I just sincerely want to thank you all so much for being a part of this.
Thank you. This was great.
Thank you for giving us this opportunity.
Thank you, Karen.
Thank you so much.